On today's Conversant podcast, we talk about the Bible Society report called The Quiet Revival. We wonder why it's called The Quiet Revival and look at all of the stats, dig into the detail of this report, really looking at the exciting change and growth of church in the UK. Who knew? And men are involved as well. Who knew that as well? Have a listen and also hear what we think this report means for your church and how we should respond. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Conversant podcast, conversations in theology, church culture, and mission. And we are really excited today to talk about the latest report from the Bible Society called The Quiet Revival, which indicates that there is growth in the church in the UK. Who knew? So I'm really excited to have along two guests, two good friends of mine, Simon and Sam, to help us, and we're just going to reflect on this report. We're going to see things that are interesting about it and maybe some things that we want to question about it too. Who knows? But really looking forward to our conversation today. So thank you, Simon and Sam, for joining us. Sam, co-worker with me in River Collective, good friend, really exciting to lead church together. Sam, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Sam, married, got a couple of kids and a dog, enjoying life very much. As Mark said, co-lead River Collective. So we planted River Wellingborough back in January 2024. So we're kind of a year and a bit into that journey as well, which has been a really super exciting journey. Stuff's growing, God's doing stuff. So yeah, it's great. That's kind of where I'm at in life, and the whole the Bible Society stuff that's come out is really helpful for us at this stage of our journey with church as well. And there's lots of stuff that's getting us thinking. So it's a great time to kind of process it as well. So looking forward to chatting.
And you feel like within your church, like a big part of the report is around the younger age group engaging with church. So is your church older, younger, in terms of obviously a year old?
Portion under kind of 35, I'd say. Under 30, okay. Yeah. So there's and that's kind of where we're seeing people coming in as well, which is really, really exciting. But people coming off, we had 2 people coming off TikTok, which is really random. So just like there's a whole area there, and the Bible Society report has kind of helped us to see, oh, this is actually a thing. So yeah, right. Like there's a good, probably a good over 50% will be under 34 easily.
Great. So you really bring in that kind of live, what it looks like in the local church aspect of this. And Simon is the leader of The Source in Derby and also associate leader of Synergy family of churches. Simon, introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Great to be with you. I'm not on TikTok, so I'll represent the older age range. Actually, when I was at the Bible Society conference in the autumn and was asked to speak there, and I introduced myself as a spiritual coach. Because I don't know if you've had that experience at a party where you introduce yourself as a pastor and you get people walk off or all sorts of strange reactions, kind of can kill the conversation. But if you say, oh, I'm a spiritual coach, it's like, well, that sounds interesting. Tell me more. But as you said, I do lead a local church with my wife, Gaynor, here in Derby. Also involved in city unity stuff across Derby, so love working with those from across the kind of theological spectrum. Also chair intercultural churches, so a passion for seeing those of different ethnicities finding their place in church as well. And I do some community development work with a great charity called Rock, Redeeming Our Communities. So just love sort of seeing how our faith intersects with different parts of society. And I'm a spiritual director as well. And just love kind of making the connections between all those different places. And I suppose the guiding kind of principle is where do I see God at work? And how can I join in with that? And so in the sense of this recent research, I think it sort of quickened my interest in just sort of observing where is this happening, who's it happening among. So looking forward to learning from you both today and bringing our collective thoughts together.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Coach. And
What a great intro that is.
what do you do with the rest of your time? That's what I want to know.
Well,
I mean, you must be bored.
Well, one of the highlights of my week, which is where I'll be tonight, is I'm part of a community choir which Gaynor leads, local vocals. So that is always the highlight of our week, singing together. 2 weekends ago, I went to see ABBA Voyage. That was exciting.
Wow.
This weekend it's Eric Clapton. So music is my first love, as someone once sang.
Well, nice. Very good. Okay, then just one other quick question before we get into the meat of it to get to know you a bit more. Start with going to you, Sam. What is the last book that you read? Or maybe you wished you'd read. I don't know. You could even go there if you haven't read it.
It's a good question because I'm torn between being honest and being real. Like, I did listen to one of your guests a couple of episodes ago, and they gave like 3 books of different spheres of life, and I was like, oh man, like wow. But in all honesty, the last book I read was SAS Rogue Heroes.
And what did you get out of that? So
I got that in another life I would have liked to be in the Special Forces.
Wow.
Nice. Good stuff. Go on then, Simon. Last book you read or wish you'd read?
I can't beat that. Actually, I'm part of a book club. We call it Everyday Theologians. And we finished reading a book last night, actually, called, got it here, Jesus and the Powers. Tom Wright and Michael Bird. Christian political witness in an age of totalitarian terror and dysfunctional democracies.
Wowzers.
Not quite bedtime reading. And I think without the help of that group, I might have given up at various points. But I think, just amidst the crazy headlines of the changing kind of political landscape around us, I just wanted to kind of not be bounced about by all of that, but actually sort of step back a bit and get a view of kind of what might a theological approach to the powers be and politics. So helpful in that respect.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll come back to that. No, that sounds another podcast. There we go. We'll get you and a couple of your mates on for that.
I definitely feel like I've not read properly.
Yeah, you could up your game, Sam, but it's fine. Honesty is usually the best policy. Usually.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, we're here today to talk about the Bible Society report. I'm surprised that Simon didn't name drop the fact that he had the kind of main author of this report in his house a few weeks ago, I think. Didn't Paul Williams stay with you? Yeah, that was a name drop.
That is a bit of a disclaimer, actually, isn't it? He is a friend.
Yeah, that's true. So Paul Williams is a friend. There you go. But as the CEO of Bible Society, he's seen this report. Obviously, it's other people, I'm sure, who've done the legwork on it, no doubt. But this report, they've called it The Quiet Revival. I mean, quite a crazy title in some ways, maybe provocative for some people, and maybe we'll get to that as well. But let me just give the headlines.
Not so quiet, given that we're all talking about it.
Yeah, it suddenly got a bit noisier. Yeah, right. So, let me just give a little, for those who haven't read it or maybe haven't heard about it, let me just give a bit of a headline to get us into that. So the headlines of this report, which is a headline of research where they compared church attendance and engagement in 2018 with that in 2024. This is the big comparison between those. And the headline is that 12% of adults in the UK attend church monthly, or at least monthly, and that is up from 8% in 2018. So 2018, 2024, it's gone up overall from 8% of the population to 12%. That's remarkable. I think I don't know how experientially people have felt about that, but maybe that's not surprising. But the surprise goes on. Other headlines: 21% of 18 to 24-year-old men are regular churchgoers. 1 in 5 18 to 24-year-old blokes are regular churchgoers. Again, I think that means at least monthly in terms of church attendance. And 30 of those adult people who go to church, 33% of them are in the age group 18 to 34. These are surprising numbers for many of us, and maybe we can talk about that. But let me just give that in its age bracket. So from 18 to from 2018 to 2024, the change for 18 to 24s, it's gone from 4% of the population to 16% of the population. From age 25 to 34, it's gone from 4% in 2018 to 13% in 2024. Age group 35 to 44, it's gone from 5% in 2018 to 8% in 2024. Then we move into the Gen Xers, 45 to 54 age band, from 6% to 5%. And 55 to 64 age group, it's gone from 10% to 8%. 65 plus, from 14% to 19%. So rushing through those numbers, but that gives you this idea that in almost every age group, that church attendance is up, apart from in that 45 to 64 age group. Absolutely fascinating. And the fact that the majority of churchgoers are men. Now, this feels like a very big surprise to me. We've talked for many years around, Christianity being a female religion, majority religion. And maybe if you pan out further than this, that might be the case. But in the UK, it turns out that men are going to church. Wow. I wonder, my initial observation, just to note, is when we look at the time period 2018 to 2024, obviously the big thing we've got in the middle of that is COVID. I can't see that this growth was in 2018 and 2019 and that early part of 2020. I don't think it happened then. Over COVID, I think universally we know churches were closed. It was all online, no idea on church attendance. And generally, when people came back to in-person church, generally, I would say across the board, it was a slow return. So church attendance was low. So it seems to me that these numbers we could attribute to the last 2 to 3 years rather than a longer period than that. So it feels to me that this is a post-COVID effect. And maybe that's something that we might want to talk about. But remarkable stats. Everyone's talking about it in all sorts of veins. And let's join in with that conversation. Simon, so start with you. What's your reaction to that when you read this report, when you hear those numbers?
Yeah, it's quite headline grabbing, isn't it? And I know that the when the Bible Society first got those stats back from YouGov, they kind of questioned it a bit and can this be right? Is this really accurate? Have we made some mistakes with the data here? But in that back and forth, no, it was a substantial kind of survey that they did, and it proves to be right. So yeah, definitely attention grabbing. I think I'm naturally a little bit suspicious of statistics. I remember doing all the modules at university around kind of stats and data analysis and data manipulation and all that stuff. So there is that sort of underlying kind of suspicion. But I think the more that I've dug into it and read through, and then as Sam was alluding to earlier in the conversation, just anecdotal kind of stories from different people as well, even from around our little group of churches, just different individuals turning up and really knocking on the door of the church, which seems to be, again, a new phenomenon, which I think is something to really take note of here. And I think in terms of I suppose sometimes we use the word revival when really we're talking about renewal. So renewal for me is where God is doing something within the existing body of the church, within existing Christians, bringing them alive in a fresh way, which is great. Revival then very much something that is happening outside the four walls of the church, and that seems to be what is happening in this report. I suppose one of the things that really excites me about it is, again, I think with revivals we have the tendency to want to kind of center it around a person. The guy in the white suit who's got the power, and even sort of historically, I remember chatting with a guy called Andy Smithyman who's researched historic revivals, and there is this tendency to look for the Hollywood hero in the piece, but when he researched these revivals, actually what he found was that revival is kind of precipitated by prayer, normally amongst a group of elderly ladies somewhere. But then it happens as everyday ordinary people play their part in what God's doing. And I think that seems to be what's happening here. It's not just kind of pocketed to one kind of sector of the church. It's really across different denominations and happening across the UK rather than centered on one particular location. So that excites me because it indicates to me that it's something that God is doing rather than it being someone's got the kind of the secret revival recipe somewhere that they've figured out. So that really excites me.
Great stuff. Thanks for that. And that means I need to keep the white suit in the cupboard. That is what you're saying, which is fine.
Away, Mark.
What about you, Sam? What's your reaction to it as you read it?
I was like, I get excited easily, but I was just excited, to hear some positive news about the church. I just think that's brilliant. Like the fact that I love that there's language that you use in there saying that the tide is turning. And I think I remember for years, all I've heard is that the church is in decline, church, and like it's just been this kind of background commentary on church. And to hear something different, it's just like, that's so good. I love that. I like what Simon was saying about it feels like it's something that God's doing. Like it's not a model. It's not a new program. It's not like a thing. It's like, well, no, like it's happening in different places, different where like there's no recipe for it. And like, I find that exciting because that's kind of adventurous. You don't know, you can't predict what's coming. Like you don't know what's coming next. So it actually, I don't know, you have to lean into it. It's something you study it. You prayerfully kind of watch it. You go, what's going on? Which I think is really cool. I also found it encouraging because it's something, I think you talked about as well, Simon, actually. It's something that I've seen in little snippets and I've kind of gone, I wonder, it seems like there's some more stuff kicking off with like young people. Like, is this a thing? And like I'd hear stories and see things online and you're like, it seems like there's quite a lot going on with like some of these young guys. And even to the point where when we planted River, we were like, I remember saying with Misha, we don't know what it means, but we really want to focus on like the younger generation. There was just something in us that's like, we want to put some attention, but we didn't know. It wasn't like, we want to make this style of church. It wasn't that. It was like, there was just something in us when we were like, I know, we'd love, there's something there. And so to see it in writing is cool. And then that it's impacting men. Like I've been in leadership for 13 years. And I guess the last 4 years I've had like quite a focus on kind of like blokes in church. And like, I don't know, because I'm a bloke and I'm in church. Like how do we tap into that kind of like the compelling stuff that's going to get them fired up and leaning in. And so it's really encouraging to see that actually some like it's happening. Like guys are leaning in, guys are stepping up and stuff. I think that's great. It's brilliant. I am interested to talk a bit more about whether revival's a helpful term in it. We'll probably get onto that later.
Yeah, well,
like that's a wider conversation, which I'm kind of, I think I'd align with you, Simon, on it. Not sure if I'd use that word necessarily, but what I do love is that the report shows with considering all the statistics, all that kind of stuff, that it does show that something's shifting. And for me, that's the great thing. Like something's shifting in church. Like, let's lean in. God, what are you doing? Like, what does this mean for us? Like, wow, this is cool.
It's interesting, isn't it? And just picking up on the title, we'll come back to the revival word a little bit later, if that's okay. But the why of it, I do get why they've called it quiet revival in the sense of it's little, the little sounds, like the ones and the twos in lots of places, maybe, that gives it that sense of. And I was talking to a church this week in Bury St Edmunds. Hey, we had a couple of guys turn up from nowhere. On church, and they wanted to discover more about God. So if you're just in one church and you have a couple of people turn up, you just think, oh, that's nice. But when this gives some indication that little bit is happening in lots of places. So the lots of little things make a big thing, and I guess that's the benefit of research like this, that gives us that sense of, is this just what's happening to us here in our little church, or is it something of a wider pattern? And I guess what's remarkable is that it seems to be part of this wider pattern. So I do get the quiet bit of the quiet revival thing. Yeah. I think that part of, interested on your thoughts on this, like part of what the research showed was that there generally is their headline is more adults believe in God generally. So across the UK, that there is this rise in what they call spiritually open, people being spiritually open. That is that they have a sense that there is a God, and they talk about in the 18 to 24, that's up from 28% to 45%, 25 to 34, 31 to 45%. And again, it's like that other stat where in all the generations, apart from the Gen Xers, which we'll get to as well, they've all increased this sense of, okay, we believe in God. And I feel like in the whole kind of postmodern conversation within Christianity that I've been part of for the last 25 years, there has always been that sense of vibe that, okay, people may not attribute to themselves the fact they're a Christian, but they believe in God. There's a spiritual sense that the rationalism of the era that's gone is handed over to a more experiential and belief in something that's beyond what is just rational. And that seems to be reflected. So I think there's been talk of this kind of idea of being spiritually open for a while. I don't know. Do you feel like there's other factors, either of you, that influence? What do you feel about this idea that at large people seem to be more up for saying they believe in God?
I do wonder the impact of COVID on it. So reflect on a lot. Do you remember we watched the news every day, and it was like death toll and all this stuff, and every day you're facing mortality in a completely different way to what we used to the point then where you're being told to stay home, and suddenly like death has become at the forefront of stuff every day, which is like it was quite a strange thing to be in. And I remember reading it was a top searches on Google, and actually in the UK, like how to pray and prayer during COVID like shot up and was one of the most searched things. And I wonder whether that's had an impact, the fact that we were immersed in this thing where like there was this generally people were afraid of dying from this. I wonder if that's kind of made people a bit softer towards something else.
Maybe.
Like being faced with it on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful, Sam. It, Mark, you began by sort of saying that between these two sort of survey points, 2018 and 2024, obviously the pandemic is such a huge feature that we're only just beginning to kind of reflect on in some ways. But I think that's insightful, Sam. I think that brought a lot to the surface. And then one of the other trends that I don't know if you've read Justin Brierley, The Surprising Rebirth of Belief in God. So he talks about the demise of atheism and new atheism, and just the idea that that doesn't actually offer anything. So people are looking elsewhere, and there is this openness to God. I asked my 21-year-old daughter, how's this play out amongst your friends at university? And she said, "Oh, none of them would say that they're atheist." So there is this the understanding that there's something other, something that we desire to be connected and discover. Our identity, I suppose, wrapped up in a divine being, or however you want to describe that.
Yeah, and I guess we've got those other social dynamics, not only COVID, post-COVID, of cost of living crisis, housing crisis, global instability, whether it's war or whether it's economic. And I think I definitely feel like for my kids, like that's a very real uncertainty in their life. And I think probably in a way that I didn't face as I was a similar age, I kind of knew that I'd be able to buy a house, at some point. My kids are like, I don't know that I'll ever be able to buy a house, So that this changes that certainty of what life's about, actually, fundamentally. And when the how your life should play out, you get a job, you get a house, you get I don't think people have that same sense. The young people of today have that same sense of, I know how the world's going to play out. Oh, environmental crisis as well, very real for the younger generation, more present to them probably than some of us older ones. So all sorts of uncertainty. Where is hope? And it's maybe this is part of what's causing this rise of faith in people as well, I guess.
And that's another very interesting and encouraging sign, isn't it? People are searching this out for themselves. Along with the rise in people discovering or rediscovering how to pray, Bible sales have gone through the roof as well. So people are, which that really surprises me. So I'm like, like even the purchase of hard copies of the Bible rather than people dipping into it on their phone, it takes quite a step for someone to actually, make that jump for themselves, doesn't it? And off the back of that, and off of the back of their kind of personal exploration, they're then coming to church. So a little way down the road.
So can I dig into the stats a little bit more, and maybe a bit more on the, let's say, challenging side of it? I don't know. I'm more skilled at cynicism than maybe others, but I guess there are things in there that I feel like the report maybe plays down a little bit. One of those is the impact of immigration and the ethnic nature of the growth of church. So, for example, one of the and this is brilliant and remarkable in itself, but I don't know how it plays out across the whole, which is so one of the stats in the 18 to 34 age band, 47% of Black people go to church. And then a third of mixed ethnic background, they called it in the report. I guess, and there are other factors in there that I'm wondering, what is the effect of maybe immigration, maybe ethnic background, cultural backgrounds? Is this, narrowed down to people who have some kind of Christian heritage that is different within maybe white background people? I don't know. Is this? Does it matter that it's highly? Is it just one portion of society? I guess I'm saying, or is this a broad spread thing? Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's definitely a factor. I don't know that I would see it as a problem. I remember.
I don't mean it's a problem. I just think it's a nuance within the report. It's clearly very, very good.
I remember a couple of years ago chatting to a Catholic priest in town, and he was describing coming out of the pandemic, how the very face of his congregation had changed from this quite elderly, predominantly white congregation to being this incredible mix of different ethnicities. So he was sort of getting his head around that, and I think I think the report then it does seem to describe the growth in the Catholic Church and in the Pentecostal Church as well, and this common factor maybe between them of people seeking a genuine experience of God out of their own kind of cultural background, one that resonates more with them. But I think I'm seeing that is very much bringing a revitalization and a fresh passion to existing churches, and we have a number of kind of large numbers of people who now see the UK as a mission field, coming from other nations, and I think all of that plays into the mix of this.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want to hear about that, Anderson was on our podcast just a couple of weeks ago talking about exactly that, him as a reverse missionary. Actually, got some good hits, that one, because we called it The Empire Strikes Back, which is his language.
I'll have to listen to that one.
You got any thoughts on that, Sam, of this kind of ethnic mix impact?
Yeah. I think it's important to take note of it, but I wouldn't say that be reluctant to say it changes the overall narrative of the report in that sense. Like I've had people turn up with no church back. So one story, for a very quick story, a guy 21 years old, no church background, no family in church, nothing, got in touch and said, can we meet? And I was doing that thing, you try and remember who are you?
Have I met you somewhere?
And I went, how did you hear about God? And he said, from you. And I was like, oh no, like, when did that happen?
I should have remembered.
I did a Q&A in his school years before that. I didn't speak to him. He got expelled, I think, after that anyway. But he basically got in touch with no church background.
Wow.
And wanted to know about God and about church. And I was just like, oh, this is interesting. And anyway, like, we journeyed stuff, started in a pub, and built up this relationship, and it actually baptized him, and it was amazing, like, just a really cool story, but it wasn't out of any cultural background. And I wonder whether, because I think that's, there's stuff happening there, which is interesting. I was also reflecting on I think I heard Ed Stetzer saying the modern experiment has failed. So that the younger generation are facing this thing, like, there was this kind of idea running up to 2020 that everything's just getting better and better and better and better and better. Like it's just like sky's the limit, stuff's absolutely flying. And then there's just there's a torrent of rubbish that happened, like, globally, that just shattered that modern experiment. Like, see, COVID happens, and then there's the stories of injustice that shot round, like racial injustice shot round online, and all these things just showed that the modern experiment failed. And so I think lots of young people facing that, going, I want to look elsewhere because what I thought was the trajectory of stuff isn't. And so I think, like, that's me broadly going, I think, yeah, there's probably ethnic stuff to take into account, but I think it's wider and it doesn't change the narrative of the whole study. So.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks. Good observations on all that. The other point, I suppose, in the midst of this kind of different diversity of thing, is the diversity of tradition, and you've indicated that, Simon, that a big part of this growth is within the Catholic Church. So for us as kind of free church charismatics, we think we've got all of the all of the goodies of growth, and maybe that was true maybe 50, 60 years ago, but hey, it's a different landscape out there now, and it turns out that these people who are searching for faith maybe are not searching for the faith that we have in the sense of our expression. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think about that, this move towards the Catholic Church is a big part of that growth?
Yeah, I think it certainly challenges the idea of maybe sometimes we think that we have to move towards culture to become more culturally relevant, acceptable, etc. This seems to be that people are willing to move towards something that is different, just precisely because Sam said what is there already isn't actually providing any answers to people. So why would we try and be like the thing that is not providing answers?
Yeah.
Let's be different. Let's be distinct. Let's be ourselves, and let's be true to our particular cultural expression of that, whether that is charismatic, Pentecostal, Catholic. And I think that I find that quite freeing, actually. And I think that authenticity then resonates with.
Yes. Yeah, nice. What's your thoughts on that, Sam? This move towards, I think that's the general stat, is that there is also a move towards more traditional, what we would call more traditional expressions of Christianity.
Yeah, I think it would be easy to look at this study and kind of go, right, young people coming in, we need to make it good for them. And then the danger is that you assume we know what they want. And what's interesting to look is like there's been huge growth in the Catholic Church. There's been huge growth in this traditional stuff. But a lot of the traditional stuff, if we're honest, is probably the stuff that cringes a lot of the older Christians out. And so like a lot of traditions you've kind of phased out a little bit because we grew up and we changed it because church went through a phase of like relevance being a key part. And I think that's probably shifted, and now we're in this authenticity. So, and like, I think it is freeing, like Simon was saying, because as long as there's authenticity in what you're doing, I think that's the connection point. So if you're uber traditional with it, like, great, be authentic with it. Like the authenticity for me is the key piece. People connect with authenticity more than anything. Yeah, and it is interesting that the traditional element is the stuff they're going to. It's kind of like it's cyclical, isn't it? A little bit like we moved away from tradition, and now like that's what's kind of coming back. It's even with fashion, like it's brilliant. Like they're wearing 90s fashion, like that's great. It's like they're listening to vinyl records, like all this stuff is cyclical, and it's just interesting seeing it in church as well. It's
yeah, that's a very point.
I think that's right, Sam. And I think where we are in this place where everything's shifting, everything's shaking, to be able to connect with something of substance, whether that's mass every week, it's the same. It's a place where I can center myself. I think there's something important in that for people.
Yeah, and this link then to this bigger story of Christianity, and where we know in this modern world the individual is kind of atomized, and isolated in terms of identity. I think part of what we believe about this Christian story is that we get to participate in the big story of God, and we find our meaning and our purpose as we enter into that. And actually, this sense of participating in a tradition that's happened, week after week after week for hundreds of years, in a certain way, actually roots, I think, in terms of identity for many people. I think for me, in a story that's bigger than myself, and that's really exciting, really helpful. I think in terms of who am I, what's going on in the world. Is things crazy and changing so quickly that there's no hope? No, if people have done this, believe this, trusted in this for so many years, if I can get in on that big story, hundreds of years of story, then it also brings me that hope that other people have had, and that maybe that's part of it as well, in terms of this big story. One of the other parts of the report indicated the loss of the nominal Christian identity. So what it said was, okay, yes, there is this increase in dedicated churchgoers, but there is a decrease in people who call themselves Christian without any expression of that. So that's really interesting. What the report's suggesting is that there is, like, if you're in, you're totally in, and if you're out, you're definitely out. There's no middle ground of, well, I kind of like to call myself a Christian. That's really interesting, I think, in terms of, what that says about our culture, and what it says about this, probably the same thing of this relevance doesn't quite work in the same way it did, because nominalism isn't there in the middle. There is a choice to, if you're going to make a choice, it's a real choice, and it's indicated that people are stepping into that choice in a more dedicated way.
I think it's helpful because I think it forces a question: what is a Christian then? Like, what do we mean? Like, that's a helpful question, I think. Like, whereas before people were like, oh yeah, I'm tick Christian, tick whatever. Now they don't. So okay, what is it to be a Christian? Like, it throws open the question of what it is to be a follower of Jesus, which I think is a great conversation. Like, I think that's quite.
And it would be great to somehow be able to get into the minds of those who are answering these questions to kind of understand a bit more, of what they understood by even the way some of the questions were framed. Yeah,
for sure.
I think you picked up on it as well, Mark, in terms of just the one of the measurements was, I think, connection with church or Christian community over the course of a month. So I think that's maybe that sort of pattern of people's engagement with spirituality or church is maybe it's a bit more haphazard than maybe church attendance was before the pandemic.
I think there's
So
a thing I saw on that
I
about
think
church.
if we measured it on the weekly attendance, I think we'd probably see a very different statistic. But maybe the monthly thing is more encouraging, but more reflective of the pace of people's lives. I don't know. Sorry, Sam, you're going to come in there.
No, I was just going to. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm good at interrupting. Even before, I think it was before pandemic, they were talking about when they say, I think it was Barna or someone, when they say a regular church attender, it used to be 3 Sundays a month, and now it's 1 Sunday a month. So that was even before this report came out.
Right.
Like we'd already spoken about that kind of what a regular church attender is. I'd also be interested in, I'm assuming a regular church attender, it's pretty lame language, but I'm assuming it's a Sunday morning thing. But I would be interested in going, I wonder how much reach you have in other environments, because like that's an interest.
What have you got in mind there, Sam?
So I've got one of the things we do as River is we meet in a venue, but then we keep at least 1 Sunday a month not in a venue, and in our smaller communities we hang out, we go out, we do stuff elsewhere, with the purpose of inviting friends and people neighbors into our community without it being kind of a standard like church gathering kind of thing. And actually we've seen real like momentum in that. And so people are coming into that. So I've got friends who essentially, for me, come to church once a month. It might not be a church service, but they are engaging on an ever deepening level relationally with the church. And like, I find that really encouraging. And I'd be interested to see inside what that looks like, because church isn't just that Sunday. We know it, and not hitting that point, but it's just it's an interesting
I
concept.
think that's really important, Sam, because those people probably wouldn't feature on the normal survey results. But I think we would miss something in all this if we could just say, "Oh, it's okay. We just keep doing the Sunday thing, and people will come." I think there is that provocation as to how are we creating other space and places where people can engage in a life and life way, where actually their discipleship and growth is going to take place in that environment. And again, those are the places where people see us as we are. We're not putting on a show on a stage or whatever, but it's real life together. And I think there's a real need for us to be brave and creative around this, in terms of, if people are spiritually curious, spiritually hungry, what kind of forms of church do we need to make space for?
I think, like I gotta be honest, like I've been going on, as you both know, for a little while now about how church needs to change because culture is changing. And my biggest fear of this report is that it just makes people go, it's okay, we can keep doing what we're doing and it'll be all right anyway. and I go, and personally, I'd feel like, oh, I've messed up the last 12 months because I've been banging about something. But fundamentally, and longer, yeah, good point. but I still feel this. I still feel that the response to this should not be, great, we can carry on as business as usual and think it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I've been talking about boomer apocalypse, and it's a dramatic term to try and say, look, hey, if we don't move towards the younger generation, then our churches are going to die out. And this report makes me go, oh, maybe I was wrong. But also I think I was right if we don't make that move. And I was talking to someone about exactly this week, and they put it in the biblical terms, which I think is incredibly helpful, which is, with new wine, you need new wineskins.
Amen.
And I think the drive to go, oh, great, it's all going to be okay because we've got revival. And revival means, we don't have to do very much or change very much. We can just keep going and it'll be okay, is not the response. The response is what you said, Simon. There is new wine. And
Yes.
what then is the new wineskins that looks like this? And again, talking to my son about it, he's going, I mean, I've always said this in the midst of it, like the older generation have been woeful, sad, like bemused, struggling with what's going on. Actually, the younger generation have been hopeful because they're experiencing, I think, what this report says: the drop in atheism, the rise in belief of God, people who want to find out more about church, and this report gives some voice to that. But then the response is, okay, let's get all the young people together and do a meeting that the older people put on for them, because this is what we've always wanted. Okay, guys, particularly us, boomers, Gen Xers, whoever we are, just got to lay down some of our agendas, not think we know what people want, allow new wineskins, new expressions of Christianity that suit this very unique new generation, exactly as we described. What are those new wineskins? And probably we aren't going to know the answer to that. We still, as I've been banging on about for the last year and more, we still need to allow churches to move and change in order to see. Well, I guess the biblical example is if you put new wine in old wineskins, the wineskins burst, don't they? And you lose it. And I feel like that image of new wineskins for new wine is really helpful complement to, I think, the real hope that we're reading in this report.
I preached from that message, from that parable on Sunday, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful just to remind ourselves of that actually this should be a provocation to those of us who are seeking kind of different forms, that actually there's an even greater need for that, and for us to go for it in that sense. Just as a little aside, because I know that the headlines focuses in on the young, I think it's very interesting that I think the stats show that amongst the over 65s there is also growth.
Good point.
1 in 5 are identify as being active Christians, and then amongst the remaining 80%, I think the stats are something like 1 in 3 would come to church if they're invited, which is quite a figure, isn't it? And I met with a group in a church on Monday morning, a prayer group, predominantly older. The eldest there, Elizabeth, she's 98 years old, so they're faithfully participate. So I was just able to share some of this with them, and just encourage them. And they were thinking, oh yeah, of 3 friends, if I invite 3, one of them will be open and connect to this. I think that's a really great provocation. And then, of course, as you alluded to at the beginning, Mark, it's our generation that's the problem generation.
Not me.
Why is that?
No, you're good. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So I coined Boomer Apocalypse. I've coined something else new as a result of this. I'm calling them Gen Exiters. So the Gen X are the people who are not in church. Everyone else is growing. The Gen Xers are
Why are we
not
stuck there?
Can I add a thought, Mark, on when we spoke about the provocation? I think especially to those in church leadership, it is a provocation, but we can easily take the individual out of it. So we can talk about, new wine, there's new wine, and if we don't have new wineskin, we lose the wine. And that's fine. But then when you start to think about like that new wine isn't like it's people, it's like lives, there's a whole level of weight that comes upon that then. So like, what am I going to do with this provocation? Like because I don't want that. I don't want to lose that wine, because otherwise, do you know what I mean? It's easy to talk about in imagery, but it becomes a bit more real when we talk about lives and faces, and like, these are the friends of my kids, or like, do you know what I mean? It's a whole different weight. And I think like I love the way he ended the report. He basically said something along the lines of like, the tide is changing and we have to respond with prayer, with faith. Like, he didn't tell you these, like, here's the next steps for what you need to do to get in on it. It's like, no, like, we need to pray into this. We need to like respond to this. And I think there is a bit of a weighty responsibility on church leadership to look at that and to make sure we don't like put our trotters up and go, oh, that's great. But actually to go like, okay, God, what does this mean for us? Like, what are you calling me to do? What are you calling us to do? How are you calling us to be brave? How are you calling us to shift? How are you calling us to change? Like that, those kind of questions, like because that wine is lives. It's
Yeah, it's good. It's a good pastoral response, Sam. Love that. That's really good.
I'm a pastor.
And the other side of that, in terms of this church leadership, is it is changing times. And so the other report that's come out recently is the Evangelical Alliance report on, they call it Changing Church Report 2025. Again, they're reporting that attendance is up, so it very much resonates similarly. But they're asking different questions, and they note two things, or I'll mention two things. One is that in their analysis, it's the large churches which are growing and the smaller churches which are shrinking. So the growth in their analysis is in the larger churches, which means the median church size in the UK is 70, according to their analysis. So it's your 100 plus churches that are seeing growth. The ones below that largely are not. That's interesting in itself.
Within that, Mark, is it clear? Is that transfer growth or the kind of growth that we were talking about earlier, where there's newcomers, or do we not know?
Yeah, that's a good point. The nature of the report is church attenders, so it's a good point. Maybe they're moving from the small churches to the big churches, but they also say that the number of new Christians that they're seeing in the church has doubled. It's not big numbers, so it doesn't account for all of the growth that we're talking about, but certainly it also resonates with this idea that more people are finding faith, for sure. So it is a similar story. But the other thing is what we've just talked about earlier that they really pick up on is that although there's an increase in church attendance, what that attendance looks like has changed. So the weekly attendance has gone down. Church membership up, weekly attendance down. That makes leading a church, as for those of us who are church leaders, very challenging. You know that you're not going to get everyone in the same room at the same time. And you want that. You can say that we've got 100 people in our church, but you only ever get 70 people on a Sunday. It's just going to be a different bunch each time, which is the nature of that. I guess as you were saying, Sam, earlier, if church isn't really, part of our wineskin has got to cope with that, with a more transient population in terms of what attendance and commitment looks like. And it was a similar story for small group engagement. That on a weekly basis, that's gone down. More people are engaging in small groups, but less frequently. And that's what we see. So all of these things indicate, I think, what we would all observe, a post-COVID effect of people more, up for commitment. Doesn't look like every Sunday. It looks like, hey, I need to visit my family or do other things. So it's something has changed there, which I guess also feeds into not just the good news of, hey, young men might turn up at my church one day, but actually building a church community in today's world has also got new challenges about it.
Yeah, and the willingness for us to be, as Sam was encouraging, prayerful and then Spirit-led in that process. I think that emphasis is really important. If we're expecting revival to look like it did in a previous iteration, then we might just miss the very thing that God's doing under our noses. But then having that openness as well to then what are the shapes or the structures that need to kind of help disciple people as they're showing interest in reading the Bible or prayer, whatever. I think the kind of the practicing the way material from John Mark Comer, I think, is a potentially really important part of this. And of course, that's borrowed from the Catholic Church, the kind of those kind of traditions. But I think if we can look for those kind of ways in which we can help people to solidify some of their kind of searching, and again to experience it through some of those practices, I think that could really help us at this time.
Yeah, and then from my point of view, here I am as KST principal. I'm reading a Bible Society report that really picks up the stats on how people are engaging with the Bible, and it's both encouraging and discouraging at the same task. I feel like I've been given a task, to be honest, by this report, because what it says is more people are reading their Bible, but more people, when they read their Bible, are not sure that it's really strengthening their faith. They know they should read it, but in fact, there's a stat there. It's like 30% of people who read it in that younger generation find that reading the Bible undermines their confidence in the faith.
So
Goodness,
then
imagine they're reading it more, but it's not doing them any good.
How have they formed their idea of, or where have they formed their idea of faith from, if it's not from the Bible?
Yeah.
And I get some of that, because if we could step back from it and come at this incredible book for the first time, it's pretty weird and pretty hard to understand what's going on if we don't have some of the framework that we've been taught along the way, I suppose.
What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, go on, Sam.
I think it's interesting. I think there's also the highly individualistic stuff makes kind of can explain some of that. I think, like, if you get something that doesn't impact you or doesn't align with you, it's okay to kind of go no. Like, there's a strange part of culture that does that. I'd be interested to find out what their view of scripture is. So if they're reading, how are they approach? So more people are reading it. Okay, so what are you almost going like? What are you reading? To hear what they think the Bible is, like, because that what you think it is determines how you read it and what you do with it. So if you're reading it as a religious textbook or kind of like a self-help kind of book, that's like you can still love Jesus and see the Bible generally as self-help, like this helps make my life better. Then obviously you're going to struggle with heaps of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see how many see the Bible as like the history of everything. Do you know what I mean? It'd be like, and that you're part of that story, and actually, like, there's a whole bigger thing going on here. So I'd be interested to take a step further back and sit with someone and ask, like, what do you see? What's your understanding of Scripture?
Yeah, and I guess it must reflect some kind of tension between their cultural understanding of how the world works and a biblical understanding of the world works, and they're seeing a clash there. Like, they've got to choose between one or the other, and that's why it undermines it. Oh my goodness! And of course, hopefully, the Bible does inform our worldview. It does change our cultural expectations, but also, obviously, again, this is my thing. Like, we need to bring these worlds together to help the Bible live our life in the real reality of our culture, and those skills, those abilities. It's what KST is about, but it's got to get out beyond, those people who can sign up for a course somehow, hasn't it? Like, we've got to give people the ability. It seems so fundamental, so important. The tools that they need to read the Bible at a grassroots level, if you like, everyday Christian level.
I am interested just quickly on that. There was a Barna research that came out, and I think this was America. So obviously, I'm not saying this verbatim for this country, but there was I think it was saying 4% of people had a biblical worldview, of like young people had a biblical worldview. And so they've got a whole list of stuff that defines a biblical worldview. But I wonder how many people are engaging with the Bible with it, but not with a biblical worldview. So it's not even something that informs your worldview. It like, you've got your worldview and then the Bible is a part of it. And so then so it's a slightly different way of doing it. I'd be interested to know some of that stuff as well, because that's quite a shocking statistic.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to see if that's changed as well, if engagement with the Bible is changing worldview, having that impact to it.
And and as you say, even engaging with it in that vein, with that expectation, and what that might mean for your life as a result of that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good. I think probably we're almost at the end of our conversation. There's one more bit that I want to pick out of, and it's kind of alluded to at the start. I want to come back to it, and that is this word revival. Now, I'd be really interested to dig in a bit more whether you feel about it. I'll be honest about me. I have a love-hate relationship with the word revival, and I think it's the tradition that I've grown up with that has this, one day God's going to do an amazing thing, and we've just got to hang on until we get there. And if we just push harder, one day there's going to be breaking. And then basically we're just hanging on for one thing to happen, revival. And we don't really know what it means, or what we mean it means and what it looks like is what we've seen before. Wesleyan revival, Welsh revival, all these things. I just wonder, is it really helpful? Can we have another word? I don't know what you guys think. Maybe you're not as jaded and as me on the word.
No, I'm with you on it. I liked Simon's way of a renewal. I think a renewal is a cool word. I always think revival is probably easier to name something in the past once it's happened. Like maybe we're too quick to put a word on it. And for me, so I've got a slightly different angle. I think, what if you're not seeing that? Are you doing a bad job? Like, are you missing what God's doing because you're not seeing that like young men turn up each, like what the danger is, it could create a thing where you feel like you're either doing really well and that can promote all sorts of other things, or you feel like you're not doing well. And so I think to put the revival thing on it, it's quite a loaded word anyway within Christian circles. So it's, that's a good, most helpful word in my opinion.
Yeah. So does it make church leaders just feel bad again? You know,
I could feel bad if I don't see stuff happening, and I know it's like, oh, well, the stats say it's happening there, and there. Well, I'm not seeing it. Then I'll be like, well, I'm doing something wrong, or what? Like it would always push. The danger is it could push you into a real striving, or like I've got to do this, or I've got to copy that, and you fail to then engage in a context in which you're present because you're trying to replicate something.
And what God is doing in your present. Yeah, absolutely. Simon, you got any advice for us on that? What's your feeling?
Mark, I was just thinking you're very good at kind of coming up with words to describe things, so that would be a good thing to think about. Throw in another sort of R word, and it's renaissance. So I would love if this didn't just stay within the sort of the bounds of, obviously it's great that different individuals are coming to faith and there's repentance within that, etc. But I think there's a need in our society right now for a renaissance, a reimagining of what life can look like in all its kind of flourishing. So I would love to see this sort of touching sort of different spheres of society that are really struggling at the moment. So it's not sort of contained within what we can do, but actually it spills out. And I think we've seen that at other parts in church history as well, haven't we? Where actually the whole of society is transformed through what God is doing. So whatever is happening, I'd love it to develop into whatever that is.
That's a really good point, and it's another reason why we need to let the wineskin grow and have a big gospel. Because if we just think it's about chucking our churches with more people and that makes us feel good, we're missing the big picture of what the mission of God wants to do in the world, isn't it? So thanks, Simon, for that. Very, very helpful. Guys, thanks so much. That's a good hour talking on that, and such brilliant insights. And I really hope that those people listening at home have got a good feel for what's going in that report, even if you don't read it, but also both excitement, faith for what God's doing, and even what that looks like a little bit for our churches. So grateful for you guys joining, for your conversation. Brilliant stuff. But of course, I can't finish my podcast without your pet theological peeve. Because I don't know. That's just the way I roll. That's what I want. So I want to know, guys, what gets your shackles up? What, hairs on the back of your neck go spiky? You want to slap your head, once all of that. I want to know what annoys you. Really important. Sam, I'm going to you first. What annoys you? Pet theological peeve.
The Christian propensity to put a verse on it. Everything, like, put a verse on it. It winds me up. Like, oh, yeah, I'm going to run a half marathon. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I'm like, well, yeah, but you could also do a training plan and still do it. So not everything in life needs a verse put upon it.
That's brilliant.
If you've done that, I'm really sorry and well done. Really good.
If you like it, you put a ring on it. If you like it, put a verse on it.
Yeah. Oh, just a verse that fits. Yeah, chuck it on it. It's great.
Chuck it on. Nice one. Love that. Nice one. Simon, pet theological peeve.
Well, I mean, for me, theology is about what we think about God. I think my main peeve is that so many people rule themselves out of that process. So we say the theologians are the ones who have done a PhD and are thinking about stuff in a ivory tower. Whereas my pet peeve is when someone says, "Oh, I'm not a theologian." it's like we're all theologians, and I think we need more conversations where we have the confidence that actually there's a lot of great thinking going on about God in our church community. Actually, we most of the time it's all ages mixed in together, and actually I think those that I probably learn most from are the kids and some of their questions, some of the ways that they are looking at the world, and so I think if we could have more of that kind of childlike approach to faith, I think we'd all have a much better view of who God is.
Nice. Nicely put. Love that. Thank you. Good peeves. Congratulations. Excellent stuff. So thanks, guys. That brings us to the end of this episode of Conversant Podcast. Really enjoyed talking about the Bible Society report called Quiet Revival. And thanks, guys, for joining us. This podcast is sponsored by King's School of Theology. If you want to get understanding on what that means to read your Bible and get a whole pile out of it and it not threaten your faith but strengthen it, then Kirsty can help you to do that. If you're watching us on YouTube, like, subscribe, all those sorts of things. More episodes coming out pretty much every other week. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks, everyone.